Here we are again with the venerable TI99 4A. In episode 6, we examined why the TI was never a real contender, and a lot of that came down to lack of software availability. That's not to say the TI didn't have a few hidden gems, and one such gem is Tunnels of Doom. Enter a world of fantasy where your instincts and imagination determine your chances of survival. Your journey is about to begin. Prepare yourself. Before there were massive multiplayer RPGs, before Diablo, Dungeon Master, Bard's Tale, or Might and Magic, there was Tunnels of Doom. Released in 1982, Tunnels of Doom was created by Kevin Kenny, who was also responsible for other TI titles such as Hunt the Wumpus and Amazing. The iconic music and sound effects for the game were composed by Hank Mishkoff. Citing inspirations from Dungeons & Dragons, Infocom Adventures, and the 1981 titles Wizardry and Akalabeth, a precursor to the Ultima series, Tunnels took 18 months to develop. This was one of the very first home computer games I ever played. The whole family would huddle around the tiny 13-inch TV wedged in the corner of the living room to take their turn battling oozes and kobolds. The game engine resides on a ROM cartridge and scenario data loads from cassette or floppy disk. Like many users of the day, we only had the cheaper tape player option, which was a slow loading affair. The TI99 cassette interface uses frequency modulation to encode bits on level change. Running at 3 MHz, the output can toggle every 725 microseconds. Data is encoded in 64-byte chunks with 2-byte checksums. Listen closely to the data stream. Hear anything unusual? Yep, because there's no error correction, every chunk of data is repeated twice, effectively halving the transfer rate in order to provide redundancy. The result is that it takes 3 minutes to load the 15 kilobytes of game data into RAM at a speed of around 680 bits per second. So what's the deal with loading game data from tape when it comes with a 30K ROM cartridge? Well, Tunnels of Doom is just the game engine that allows for different scenarios to be loaded and played. The game shipped with 2 of them. Pennies and Prizes is designed for kids and has no monsters or combat, while Quest of the King sees you battling hordes of enemies. Once loading is complete, you'll have to set up your party. Up to 4 players can participate in this turn-based dungeon crawl. There are 4 classes to choose from, each with their own stats, weapons, armor, and magic abilities. Fighters, as one would expect, are the tanks. They can wield all types of melee and ranged weapons and can use all types of armor and shields. They take the most damage but have no special abilities. Rogues can only use light weapons and armor, but are good with ranged attacks and have the ability to find hidden doors and avoid trap damage. Wizards are the only class that can use magic items found throughout the dungeon, but are limited to basic equipment and have the lowest number of hit points. And finally, there's the hero class that is only available in single-player games and combines the abilities of all the multiplayer classes into one. Upon descending the stairs to begin your adventure, the game procedurally generates a randomized dungeon up to 10 levels deep. The generation algorithm ensures that there are no rooms that are inaccessible and stocks the dungeon with random monsters, loot, traps, hidden passages, power-ups, and other features. Once the party is formed, you will have a limited amount of gold to spend to purchase your initial loadout. The big ticket items won't be affordable early on, but you can return to the store later, as well as find upgraded equipment as you clear rooms. Tunnels of Doom may have been the first RPG to utilize full-color 3D graphics when navigating the dungeon instead of just wireframes. Another nice feature is an auto map that generates as you navigate each floor of the dungeon. It's also possible to find a full map of each floor in a room's loot. In another novel feature, the game transitions to a top-down view when entering a room. Players and enemies then engage in turn-based strategic combat where you can move, change equipment, or attack. the game allows you to reorder your players, which becomes important as your characters become wounded, acquire better armor, luck, or protection. Before entering a room, it's possible to listen at the door to try and determine what type of enemy lurks inside, if any. Further, instead of entering 2 by 2, you can break down the door and charge into a room with the entire party. This is great for entering into quick combat, but makes escaping more difficult. It's also possible to enter into negotiations with monsters to exchange an amount of gold to avoid combat. However, doing so means you are not able to claim any loot that may be in the room. Speaking of loot, players can trade items between themselves as they upgrade their gear, but good luck deciding on who gets that one new item that dropped when everybody wants it. When a player's wounds become greater than their total hit points, they become disabled and are no longer able to participate in combat. Disabled players can be healed by fountains, eating rations, or by using healing items purchased at the general store. If all players become disabled, your party is defeated and the game is lost. Additionally, the game provides only a limited number of turns to complete the objectives based on the number of floors in the dungeon. If you take too long, the quest objectives are destroyed. If you aren't able to finish your dungeon because you thought 10 floors was a good idea, the game allows you to save and restore your progress at any point when you're not engaged in combat. For the time, a lot of thought went into the game balance. Some examples include player stats increase as they level up, but monsters get more difficult the deeper into the dungeon you go. Magic items and other features in the world can increase your weapon and armor stats, but certain enemies have special attacks, some that can decrease those stats. Living statues barter gold in exchange for identifying magic items, but they get greedier the deeper you go. Finding quest items increases the number of wandering monsters you'll randomly encounter, so you'll always have to fight your way back up to the top floor. Oddly, additional stores can be found at lower levels of the dungeon, but the items get progressively more expensive. All these game features are crammed into just 30 kilobytes, which is mind-blowing. Coders back then really did have to optimize every aspect of their software and use clever tricks to save space. Apart from Pennies and Prizes and Quest of the King, no other game scenarios were ever officially released. A level editor was available, and a number of third-party dungeons could be purchased from a developer named Asgard. There were even Doctor Who-themed dungeons, complete with a playable canine character, and the Daring Adventures in Kmart, which found the heroes trying to find the Blue Light Special before the store closes. More recently, a Tunnels of Doom Reboot was released for modern computers. The game is a free download and features an enhanced user interface, graphics, and sound while retaining the original gameplay mechanics. A link to the project is in the description below. So that concludes our look back at Tunnels of Doom. In my opinion, the game was a shining example of what the TI could do and introduced us to some novel concepts that eventually became standard features in the role-playing genre that persist even today. I hope you enjoyed this bit, thank you so much for watching, see you next time, and I'll leave you with the Tunnels of Doom theme from the Remake composed by Frank Scheffel.